Hi y'all. I don't know how many people are actually going to see this just because I don't usually make long form content. I'm doing a lot of shorts lately, but I know that in the future I want to transition into a more long form content based channel just because art is such a process and I don't feel like that process can really fit in the span of a short that can only be under 3 minutes. So yeah, we're definitely going to be going into more long form in the future, and that's going to leave a lot of opportunities for more stuff like speed paints and hopefully even tutorials once I feel like I'm actually good enough that I can teach people, because right now it's still a matter of I don't know how this works, but it does work and so it looks good. But I love art so much, and so I just really wanted to show everyone all the stuff I've been working on, and that's really why I created this channel. And it's been so nice to see all of the support that I've gotten so far, and it's been really amazing that I made it to 100 subscribers, and I can't wait to see where things go from here because it's just been so awesome. This piece that you can see in the speed paint right now is a piece I actually did back in September of 2024, so almost a full 2 years ago, which is crazy because it ranks up on one of my like best pieces I think I've ever done, just because it's so realistic and it turned out so good. I'm just so proud of it. This one, yeah, you can see I used a actual photo as a reference just because I did not think I could draw a face from memory or just from my mind, and so it was really nice having a sketch over it. But I was also really concerned about how I was going to go from having a pencil sketch with really thick line art to a realistic drawing. And so the whole time I didn't have a clear idea of exactly what I was going to do. I had seen some tutorials of, how to draw a realistic eye or how to draw a realistic nose. But the thing about those tutorials is that most of the time they go from very specific angles. So, how to draw a nose from the front, or how to draw an eye from the front, or how to draw a nose from a very slight side angle, or how to draw a mouth from the front. And all of those things are helpful, but for this drawing that you can see right here, where the face is tilted very much to one side, almost to the very side, it was a lot harder because it felt all of a sudden like those tutorials were not going to be nearly as helpful as they had seemed when I was watching them. And I was like, oh, I could do this. And then I actually went to open up Procreate and I said, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. But I definitely think that being able to just work through it a little bit at a time was really helpful. All in all, this drawing took me about 12 hours, is what I could tell, like, just from the duration of the time lapse, but it felt like way longer because I was opening it up like days and days and days and days in a row, just doing a little bit at a time, chipping away. I'd open it up and be like, okay, today I'm gonna work on the ear, or today I'm gonna work on the side of the face. And it was definitely a process, but it did turn out really good. One of the things that helped me the most, I would say, is having a lot of different brushes, because usually I use the same brushes for almost everything. I have some really good brushes that I'll probably mention in another video in the future, and I think they're called the paint and blend brushes. They're really nice because if you use a really light pressure with your Apple Pencil, it just blends everything, but if you go harder with the pressure, then it's an actual brush, and it just mimics the feel of a regular paintbrush because you can paint and blend, obviously. And it just feels so nice, and it reminds me a lot of a brush that I used to use when I used Krita, because a long time ago, before I got my iPad and I was using Procreate for everything, I used my laptop, which had a touch screen and a really nice pressure pen, and the whole thing was just really good, and it worked really well for a long time, but it didn't have Procreate, it had Krita, and Krita's great. It has so many features, probably I don't know, might have more than Procreate, I really don't know, but it was so much more complicated because it didn't have the same kind of sleek, easy to understand layout, and it confused me so bad. And so most of the time I didn't know what I was doing really. I had a decent feel for some of the brushes, but I had to look up a lot of things. I didn't know how to do stuff. I barely even knew how to like blur a layer. It was really difficult. And there were some things that I became really good at because I would say my critter drawings actually turned out really good, especially considering the skill level I was at then because that was years ago. And now I feel like I'm better at anatomy. I'm better at drawing faces. I feel like I'm better at it in general. But for the skill level that I was when I was working with Krita, I think I made some pretty decent stuff. So that was pretty interesting. But the deal with Procreate is that I try to look for really cool brushes because the ones that you get when you open up the app, like when you first get it, the brushes that come with it, they're good and I use a lot of them, but it's also good to get more. So I'm always looking for like more free brushes or just interesting brushes that I can find. And I found the paint and blend brushes, but I also found some really cool hair brushes. And those brushes helped me out so much when I was doing the hair. You can see I just did the very rough like layer of hair, just one base color. And later on, when I went to do the highlights and the shading for the hair, it was so helpful. Usually, when I draw hair, I don't do it in this general style of like as realistic as possible. And so it turns out a little bit different, but I use the same process across most of the styles that I do, where I use a regular brush that's like not a special hairbrush, just like a round brush and I do all my shading with that, and then after that, I go with a actual hairbrush and I do the highlights and I do the extra highlights and the streaks and things, and that's usually how it works, and so that's what I did for the most part here, and I think it turned out really good. I also had a lot of trouble figuring out how to do the mouth because, as I said earlier, it was on an angle and it was so daunting and I did not want to start and it just seemed like something that was going to cause me a lot of trouble. But all in all, it did work out eventually. I remember I had to come back to it a few times and I had to put my iPad down and be like, okay, I gotta take a break. But I think one of the most interesting, or not even interesting, but fun parts of this drawing that I got to do was the ear. I don't know why, but the ear was so fun. I love drawing ears, and I think it's one of the best parts of the face that I can draw because it feels simple to me. And so the shading was really fun, and everything was just really fun. And looking back on this drawing, and now that I'm like watching this speed paint again, because it's been a while since I actually saw the time lapse, just because I put my art away and I try not to look at it too much after I make it because I don't want to get upset at myself and be like, ooh, you messed up there, you messed up there, you could have fixed it there. But looking back on this, I think I could have improved on the shading a little bit just because some of the colors were a little bit muddy and I could have used better transition colors and just more saturated shading. But all in all, it isn't terrible. I definitely was not used to drawing like this because I do not draw realistic stuff. All of my art style is very much here's a very dark pencil line art and then the shading. And I'll sometimes go and tweak the pencil line art, like if I want it to be more of taking the color of the things around it, or if I want it completely black, I can go in and I can tweak that. And I'm not terrible at that, but usually my art style in general is just very, very line art oriented. And I put a lot of time and effort into the line art. So this was so weird for me because I was not at all used to doing stuff that didn't have line art. And so I was like, how am I going to tell where the nose starts and ends? How am I going to tell where her jaw is? Because there's no line art to declare that for me. And so it was definitely really interesting. But branching out with different art styles is something that is so important. I mean, for any skill level, I feel like, because it it teaches you to think outside the box and it teaches you that um there's just so much you can try and it's good to try out lots of things instead of to just get stuck with one general thing because for a while I was like, how am I supposed to get better at art? And then I realized I just need to be trying more things and branching out and really stepping out of my comfort zone a little bit. And it really matches the time when I made this really matched everything else that was going on because I remember 2024 was a really interesting year for me. I was starting in a new school and I was meeting a lot of new people and I was still trying to find myself, I was younger. It was definitely an interesting time. And so it makes sense that I wanted to experiment with different art styles and try out different stuff because it was such a time for that. And all in all, I love the way this drawing turned out. It turned out so good. And part of me is like, dang, you really should have done more in this style because I've seen so many illustrators that make so much money doing styles like this and people commission them because they want their characters drawn and all of that. And you can really express all the things you want to express and capture the vibe of the characters that you wanna draw, and this wasn't even a character I drew, this was literally just someone, I mean, it it could be a character, I mean, let me know if it looks like one of your characters, but, it didn't even mean anything to me, like, the girl I was drawing. It was just a really fun exercise for me to be able to try out different styles, and I'm so glad I did it, and even though I haven't really done a whole lot of realistic stuff in the future, and, like, since, I'm just so glad I did it because I think it turned out really, really great. So let me know what you think, and thanks so much for watching.